Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel, Andi. Today I'm going to be doing another reading wrap-up, this time for 2 weeks. I wasn't around last weekend, sorry there wasn't a video, but I was off doing the Stitch and Bitch live show over on Rhea's channel, which is something we do once a month. And so if you are curious about what we were talking about for 2 hours, I will link the recording for you. It was a good time, but I was very tired after that, so I didn't do any more filming. So yeah, today I'm here to talk about 2 weeks of reading. I actually finished some things. A lot of them are short, but 2 of them are very long books, and I'm very proud of myself. Also, just so you know, I have flipped everything so everything's on my left because, as you may be able to see, my dog is back there. And I know you guys like seeing her in her rocking chair, so I didn't want to have my head be in the way. But now I'm very confused because usually I do everything on my right side, but now I'm doing it on my left side. So I'm gonna get confused at some point. But just know it's because I wanted you to see my sleeping dog, who, now that I've gone to all this trouble, isn't gonna move at all. I don't even know if you can actually see her back there. Ava. Yeah, you're ignoring me. Okay, let's actually get into the books. The first thing I want to talk about is the Windflower series by Andi C. Buchanan. I finished the last 3 of these novellas. This series is billed as contemporary witchy fiction, and that describes it very well. It's kind of like cozy, low-stakes mysteries blending magic and research and science and a lot of queer characters living their best lives, and I really, really enjoy it. So in order, these were Alpaca and Apparitions, which is my absolute favorite in the series. If you have read these, you know why, because Mildred, the main character, is a fiber witch, and there's a lot of talk about like spinning wheels and her assembling her loom and doing, you know, fiber arts and stuff. And to me, that is the epitome of cozy, like having a cup of tea, reading a book, planning your fiber projects. Excellent. There is also like a ghost in the story, and the main plot is Mildred has moved into this kind of decrepit cottage that she's refurbishing. There is a ghost there, and she and her newly met neighbor, who might be her love interest, are trying to figure out what the ghost wants. And yes, there are alpacas, so I love this. Like I said, it's my favorite in the series, and I wish there had been like a sequel, more Mildred, something. I am Mildred. I'm basically Mildred. Anyway, moving on. The next one is Data and Divination, which I also quite enjoyed. This one is kind of about 2 members of a witchy family that's kind of been like a cult. They live in their compound and they're cut off from the rest of the world. They're very conservative and have bizarre ideas about the outside world. And these 2 people have left the family and are beginning to learn that they can use their magic, they can explore witchcraft in the modern world in a different, more supportive community. And that was also really, really nice. The main character in this, and I'm completely blanking on her name, Jasmina, that's her name, Jasmina. She works in like a government field, basically querying databases. She's her specialty is actually divination, so searching for things and finding things, but it kind of shows up in her actual job of searching for data. And I thought this was a really fantastic idea. Possibly because my actual work sometimes resembles this, like my personal life, my interests, my hobbies and stuff. Why I'm good at those things is also why I'm good at my actual job and why I enjoy my career. So I liked reading a story with somebody who had kind of a similar vibe in their life. Like, they really like their job, even though some people might think it's boring. You just never know what's gonna tickle your particular brain, right? So yeah, also really enjoyed this one. And then unfortunately, the 5th and final novella, Weddings and Witchcraft, was probably my least favorite in the entire series. I felt like this one was kind of half-baked. It comes back around to kind of the main characters of the entire series, Marigold and Laurel, and of course it is about the build-up to their wedding, and there's a little bit of a mystery in there as well. And I just felt like it was a little bit rushed. It was a little bit too short, and there was kind of this emotional, angsty, almost sort of breakup thing in it that I was just like, these people are way too practical and emotionally intelligent to have just flipped out like that. I mean, it's a brief blip in the story, but I spent the entire time reading that scene going, why are you behaving this way? So it felt like it was written for like plot convenience rather than realistically. But overall, I really liked this. This series really hit the spot for something that was kind of supernatural, but also a little bit science fiction-y and very, very cozy. I really need more Mildred and those alpacas though. So in my last wrap up, I mentioned reading a children's picture book called Very Good Hats by Emma Straub. And okay, I kind of read it as a joke, but it was also a fun book. And after I read that, I went, you know, picture books are not really my thing most of the time, but I wonder if my library has anything about hats for adults, like millinery. And it turned out the answer was no. When I searched my library's catalog, the only things related to hats that came up were children's picture books. And I was like, adults care about hats too. So unfortunately, I couldn't find like a nonfiction book about hats. If you know of one, please let me know that I might like. But I was reminded about the Hat Trilogy by Jon Klassen. These 3 picture books are called I Want My Hat Back, This Is Not My Hat, and We Found a Hat. And they were really fantastic. I read them because I remembered hearing about them when they were published, specifically This Is Not My Hat. I remember there being some buzz about this particular children's book because it was maybe a little bit dark. What I really enjoyed about it, it was my favorite of the bunch, is that the text is kind of directly contradicted by the pictures. It's a pretty interesting concept to put in a children's picture book, but it's great. So I was laughing and having a lot of fun while reading all 3 of these, and This Is Not My Hat is definitely the best of the bunch. Very happy that I read them. Would like to read something about hats that's not just for children though. Continuing in the vein of cozy and fun things, did you know there is a new Vampire Knitting Club book by Nancy Warren? I thought that the series was over with book 13, but somebody in my comment section recently mentioned reading the next one, and I was like, oh my god. So I read Mosaics and Magic. Actually, I listened to it with my ears, I didn't read it with my eyeballs, but that's because that's the way that I prefer consuming this particular series. This one comes back to Rafe and Lucy's wedding, and it was okay. It was okay. It definitely felt like this book was a launch pad for Lucy's best friend Jennifer getting her own spin-off series. I believe it's called Vampire Knitting Club Cornwall. Will I be trying it out? Yes, just in case there's good knitting content. Also, I like Jennifer. I think she's probably a better character than Lucy is. So I kind of felt like it was really wrapping up the threads of Lucy's story. You know, we're finally getting her wedding. She's finally with Rafe. I'm sorry if this is spoilers. It was telegraphed very early on in the series, so I don't feel like it's actually that big of a spoiler. He's the handsome, mysterious, very old vampire, okay? you know she's the one he's gonna end up with. Now that being said, probably my biggest problem with this book is that it's really all about Rafe and Lucy finally being together, and I don't think there's any chemistry between them. There's really nothing between them. I felt like Lucy pretty much still didn't know him. I'm like, did people really sit down and have an intimate chat before you decided to get married? This might sound kind of ranty, but I did enjoy this, and I keep coming back to Nancy Warren's series because they're just light, fluffy, fun stuff. I do enjoy the mysteries, and it is always like the side characters and this buildup of like the community around the main character that I become like really invested in. Isn't that the way with most cozy mysteries, I guess? So I will continue reading these, but I do wonder if number 14 is finally the end of this particular series. Next up is another cute and positive thing that I read. It is Things to Look Forward to, 52 Large and Small Joys for Today and Every Day by Sophie Blackall. I stumbled across this at the library and thought it would have some really gorgeous artwork in it, so I read it in a single sitting and it was lovely. So yeah, this is a collection of like 52 week by week illustrations of something that the artist had to look forward to. I believe this was like originally an Instagram project during the pandemic. I haven't really looked into it or not, but it kind of read that way, the week by week thing. It very much talked about the pandemic and stuff like that. But I thought it really did have lovely artwork and I liked a lot of the sentiments in it. I think to me it was just a very good reminder that there are a lot of small things and even big things in life that I take for granted that really are very positive, and being grateful for them and taking a moment to actually look forward to those things is really good for your mental health. But anyway, I enjoyed it and would recommend it. And lastly for today, I have two large books that I finished. The first one I want to talk about is The Code Breaker, Jennifer Doudna, Gene Editing, and the Future of the Human Race by Walter Isaacson. This is a nonfiction book that I think is kind of billed as a biography of Jennifer Doudna, who is one of the people very famous for discovering the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology. She won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, I believe, with Emmanuel Charpentier, who is one of the co-discoverers. And I have read a lot about gene editing and about CRISPR in the past couple of years, which is why this was on my radar. I'm usually keeping an eye out for books on this topic. And I was like, hey, I actually read Jennifer Doudna and Sam Sternberg's book, A Kraken Creation, about their discovery. And it's been a little while since anybody has kind of tackled the history of the discovery of CRISPR and kind of unraveled the sequence of events and the patent wars and all of that stuff. So I approached this as a history of the discovery of CRISPR-Cas9, or just CRISPR as an editing technique, and how it has influenced the world in the years since then. And for that, I quite liked this book. I think it's weird that the book is described as a biography of Doudna, because actually a huge percentage of this book is devoted to describing other scientists, other people involved in the story, their histories, and how they tie in to the whole CRISPR thing. And yes, Doudna is kind of the central figure, but it's not a biography of her entire life. I don't know. Which honestly I think is probably a good thing, because I mean, her career is still ongoing. I think it would be weird to write a like intense biography of somebody who like we don't even know the eventual legacy that she's going to leave. So whatever. But like I said, I thought it was actually a pretty good explanation of the history of CRISPR, and enough time has passed that Isaacson is able to really dive into the various scientists pitted against each other to claim discovery of CRISPR, who would get the patent rights, who was going to win the prizes for this. The dust has kind of settled on parts of that now, and that's what I really wanted to know more about. This book also concludes with the most recent information about how CRISPR and gene editing and RNA research ties in with the pandemic and trying to create vaccines for COVID. And I really like that. I didn't know anything about that. But I think overall, the way that this book is structured, it felt like Isaacson kept, like, he would jump forward into a topic and talk about like one person, but then he would back up in time and talk about another person. And it wasn't exactly like spinning the wheels, but I just felt like it wasn't as linear of a story as it could have been, maybe because he was trying to talk about so many people involved in this very big thing. I'm glad I read this because I do think it's the most up-to-date thing on CRISPR I've found in a while. And I just like knowing more about the history and the news surrounding that. So it was worth reading, but it wasn't like this amazing book. I would say it's like a 3.5 star kind of book rather than 5 stars. And the last monster book that I have to talk about today is Godel, Escher, Bach, and Eternal Golden Braid by Douglas R. Hofstadter. This was published in 1979, I believe. It is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and as best as I can tell, this is a nonfiction book in which Hofstadter is trying to explain a bunch of different concepts, from music to art to mathematics, specifically like number theory and Gödel's theorem, that there are essentially these strange loops or paradoxical concepts in the universe that he thinks underlie consciousness. And possibly I have completely mixed that up. It's a very complicated concept, and my main thoughts about this book is that he spends a lot of time explaining these really complicated concepts and very little time at the end of the book really wrapping them up and tying them into his strange loops create consciousness idea. So I felt like I enjoyed this book when it was just rhapsodizing about cool concepts. Like, I really enjoyed the stuff about music, and when he starts tying some of the like mathematical things into DNA, I was like over the moon about that. So the bits that were just like very geeky info dumping, great. The actual argument about what this means for artificial intelligence and consciousness, I didn't really get it. I just didn't think there was enough time spent on that. I also think that Hofstadter probably thinks that all of his prior explanation means the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory as to what his point is, and maybe I would feel that way too if I cared at all about the many, many chapters about number theory, but I would like to never read about TNT again. Not the explosive material thing, but the number theory thing, the notation thing. So yeah, that's my really lame review of GEB. It's a monster. There are parts of it that I really enjoyed. There are parts of it that literally put me to sleep, and I read it. I'll probably never read it again. I'd like to read something that is talking about this in terms of what we know now versus what we knew back in 1979. And that is it for most of my reading in February. I may finish a couple more things by the end of the month, but I have 2 days left, so that'll be for the next wrap up. February, I have to say, was a month of really fun reads. I really enjoyed a lot of what I read, but I felt kind of frustrated because I was taking a very long time to finish large books and only finishing short books, which is fine, but not as satisfying. Anyway, I'm on to a new batch of things in March, and I'm excited about that. And in a couple of days, I should have a quick update on my annual goals, because I've got a little bit to say about that. I thought I should just split that off into its own thing. I'm quite happy with my progress towards things so far this year, even though we're only 2 months in. So with that, I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you again soon. And until then, bye.